What's up, everyone? Draco Joker here. And now we did a video involving Ramses. Now we're gonna do one involving Guan Yu. So, Guan Yu is a Slayer, Affinity, Strength, and Allegiance Order. And why we're talking about Guan Yu is because he's one of the starters between the three. And I'm wanting to help people maybe pick their starter, or if nothing else, maybe just give them something to keep in mind as they're looking at that option. Okay, so with the base stats, all the bottom ones are going to be the same no matter what the level is. So speed 95, initiative 87, crit rate 10%, crit damage 60%, resistance 15, accuracy 15. So at level 1, HP is 1,110, attack is 90, and defense is 66. Once at level 60, the HP goes up to 12,223. Attack 991. Defense 727. So, the basic ability. Let's go to Drain real quick. Before we get started reading those, let's go to Drain. So, with Guan Yu, you will be placing Drain 2. So, for Drain 2, this hero receives 20% increased damage, and attackers heal for 20% of the damage inflicted. So with Drain, whoever gets this debuff takes 20% more damage, but also heals the attacker by 20% of the damage inflicted. So Drain becomes very helpful. So, we'll talk about that in a minute. Basic. Attack one enemy. If the target is under Drain, then inflict additional damage equal to 5% of the target's max HP. Attack all for the core, Crescent Slash. Attack all enemies with a 25% additional chance to strong hit. Has an 80% chance, which I'm sure booked will be a 100% chance, to place Drain 2 on each target for 2 turns. So you get your AoE Drain 2. For the ultimate, Frost Fair Blade Dance. Attack all enemies, then attack 2 random enemies. If an enemy is defeated, place initiative up 2 on this hero for 2 turns. So initiative up, let's go up and see what that is. Initiative up. Increase initiative stat by 20%. Which the initiative will then help get back to the ultimate faster, essentially. So the passive, increase 20%, inflicts 20% increased damage to enemies under Drain. So once you put that Drain already is doing increased damage to the enemy, Guan Yu will do another additional 20% damage to the enemies under Drain. Divinity Generator, gain 80% Divinity when defeating an enemy. And then the imprint is the same as the passive, just generally half. So you inflict 10% increased damage to enemies under Drain. 20% attack all battles. And then here's the Ascension bonuses and the Awakening bonuses. I'll leave it here for a minute. So you can take a screenshot or read it, or you can pause and read it or whatever. But I do want to talk about the Awaken ability 5. This is for the 5th one. Awakening bonus 5. If an enemy is defeated using the ultimate, reduce the cooldown of the core ability by 1 turn. So you get back to your abilities faster, essentially, especially once you have this awakening. When it comes to Guan Yu, there's a couple things I do want to discuss real quick. Drain, early on, like in the alpha, one thing we saw was healing. You don't have tons of access to healing. Um, with that being said, one one factor will be what hero you got in the minigame. So if you got a healer in the minigame, this isn't going to be as important. Um, and then the other thing is, I know at some point we get Soul Day. I don't know if it's like an hour in, if it's we get it pretty much immediately. That's unclear at this point, but it does appear that we do get a Soul Day along the path. So a Soul Day will help with healing, but outside of that, Drain can become very helpful to help keep your team alive. Unless you have again a healer or like someone with like me, I got Heimdall, so I'm going to be having some defensive aspects that's going to help me like shield, uh, potentially intercept, different things like that. Where this becomes a little less imperative. It's still helpful, it's just not. It may become less important. The other thing I want to talk about is if the target is under drain, so if you've done your core and if it's at 100%, all the targets should have, all the enemies should have drain. But if it's under drain, then inflict additional damage equal to 5% of the target's max HP. Obviously, on waves, this isn't going to be generally as imperative. Maybe down the line when they have tons of health, it might be a little bit more helpful, but it's not going to be as imperative, especially early on. When it comes to bosses, the one thing I do want to state with this is with bosses, I noticed like it does still help because I had Guan Yu in Alpha Wave 3, so I do have some experience in this. It is still helpful. It's better than not having any damage with max HP coming into play. Um, but I feel there's better options. Lady Zoc has her blades, which does HP damage. Um, Shoot, even Ramsey's acid. In my opinion, I think even Ramsey's acid and especially Zoc's blade is going to be better than this skill because the only time this comes in effect is when you're using the skill. So if you're using the ultimate, this doesn't come into play. When you're using the core, this doesn't come into play. Where bleed, it happens every time on their turn, no matter what skills you're using. And same with acid. Acid does the same 5%, but it's every turn, no matter what skill you use. So I don't feel the max HP is as important or as impaired. Like it's not as helpful as like those other debuffs when it that does essentially the same thing. And then so I want you to just keep that in mind because I know some people talk about this max HP. It's not like um, Beowulf in Alpha where he had kind of like a max HP damage on every ability where you consistently saw that benefit. This is not going to be consistent. Where with the debuffs on the other two will be more consistent, if not completely consistent. So I would say with Guan Yu, he's better for general overall progression, especially if you lack a really good healer or defensive abilities. He's gonna. I feel he's gonna be the better choice between the three. Um, because you get the drain where you're going to do increased damage, and then you get the life steal, and then you do get a little bit of the max HP damage. You get the initiative up, which then will help you get back to your ultimate a little bit faster. And then once you can awaken him to 5, once you can get him back to his ultimate a little bit faster, then you can then make your core ability reduce its turn, the turn reduce the cooldown by 1 turn every time you do your ultimate. So I personally think he he's good for like overall, um, but also with a touch with a little bit of survivability because that drain early on can become very helpful, especially if you don't have the proper healing or defensive aspects. So if that's your focus, I would say pick Guan Yu as the one, as your starter. So with that being said, I think I'm going to wrap it up, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you.